Hello, so Bedman's about to come out for Strive, and I figured there's enough footage for me to make a video on him that isn't just a reaction or watch along that others may have. This isn't a slight at this kind of content, but I do think I have some insight to offer that a specialist like me can offer. For those who don't know, I've been playing Guilty Gear competitively since the release of Guilty Gear Xrd, and my main in that game is Bedman. I have competed from 2014 to 2023 in Guilty Gear with various top 8 placings at majors. My most recent notable placing is getting second at EVO 2022. When Bedman was announced for Strive, I was ecstatic. I can finally drop this stupid ass fan man for the character I truly want. Take no offense on you mains, I'm just joking. In this video, I kinda want to bumble around a few thoughts in regards to what they retained from Xrd Bedman and how they adjusted this character going into Strive. There is a perception that characters who transition from oldie Guilty Gears going into Strive are often different. The more cynical people say that they're mutilated. The most neutral term used is that they're just simply different. It is of my opinion that some characters made the transition pretty well and retained the core of what they are, while others had to be almost completely different characters just to adapt and Strive. Now I did mention that I was ecstatic when Bedman was announced, but I kept a very cautious optimism until I saw what the starter guide entailed. After watching the release trailer, starter guide, and hand cam footage of various folks on Twitter who tried him out in EVO Japan, I think I have enough information to go on to formulate a coherent opinion. And what is that opinion, you may ask? Well, that Bedman in Strive is very faithful to his Xrd counterpart, and it is of my belief that he made the transition to Strive very gracefully. Now on for the reasons why I think so, here comes the rambling. Movement is one of the most defining parts about Bedman. For the uninitiated, Bedman has an 8-way air dash instead of a traditional air dash or double jump. You tap up to enter a mandatory hover state before inputting your next direction, and Bedman will air dash towards that direction. Strive Bedman still retains that. In fact, it can be argued that it's even stronger in this iteration. You see, Bedman can also air dash cancel his air normals into air dashes on contact with the opponent to create some pretty delayed Gatling strings. He can also do it to retreat or to adjust his combos and confirms. We see that in Strive, Bedman is air dash canceling moves that was not previously air dash cancelable, primarily JH and JD. Bedman's air dash speed also looks quite fast in Strive, meaning that the overhead and empty low shenanigans still look to be very strong. It's also important to consider that Bedman still retains the hover state. Given how juiced up some of the 6Ps are in this game, baiting out 6Ps with hovers is going to be crucial. I looked at some of the frame data between Xrd 6Ps and Strive 6Ps, and they're more or less kind of aligned, so with punishing 6Ps with air forward dash JK will still be very important as a Bedman player. The last thing to consider with Bedman's air movement as a whole is the nature of other characters' movesets. In Xrd, Bedman doesn't have to be too worried about being sniped by gigantic hitboxes from far away, but that's different in Strive given how large some 2Hs, jumping slashes, and some specials tend to be. Of course, movement is always going to be based on matchups as it always has been. Also, a final tidbit, but Bedman's ground movement seems to be normalized now. Xrd Bedman has the fastest walk speed in the game to compensate for his odd forward dash, which is essentially a parry. Strive Bedman has a decent walk speed, and the rolling animation that you often see in videos is actually his new dash animation. My assumption from the looks of his dash is that it may reliably low profile things similar to his walk in Xrd, but the game has to come out for me to properly lab these interactions. My general consensus on Bedman's buttons is that they're quite powered up in Strive. To be fair, Bedman's buttons in Xrd were pretty middling outside of a few exceptional ones. I don't want to go over every normal and compare them because, I actually want to make this video, but I'll go over the key ones that should be mentioned. Bedman's 2P in Xrd was easily one of the best 2Ps in that game by reach and speed, and it looks exactly the same in Strive. It still looks like it will beat 5 frames. Now the issue in Strive is that 2Ps do not have proper Gatlings into other normals other than, the command normals, and the revised Bedman 6P and 6H do not look like good options, so we may be at a situation where 2P confirms aren't really a thing with Bedman. This is potentially fine if Bedman can just special cancel on his projectile to frame trap or to set up, similar to how Zato uses 2P to build distance to summon Pierce. Also, Bedman's 2P on counter hit will still be very strong given how far his 2K and 2D is in Strive. Strive Bedman's slash buttons look pretty run-of-the-mill and functional, but his JS in particular looks pretty bonkers and hits a lot further. Bedman's JH is kept intact. This move had a few purposes in Xrd. It cranks up risk well, and every hit is an overhead, so the opponent has to properly switch block low on time if Bedman lands. This might be easier in Strive given the landing recovery imposed on certain actions in that game. Lastly, JH is fantastic at baiting dead angles, and no doubt is still going to be great at baiting the Strive's YRC equivalent. Bedman's new JD is no longer this weird clap move, but instead is his old Task-C bed drop attack. This change means that Bedman no longer has his instant overhead, and that function has been shifted over to his new 6H. I'm curious to how integral JD is going to be in his routes this time. Falling Task C was important in Exert Bedman's combos, but the routes were pretty canned due to the restricted hitboxes on that move. Bedman did lose his 1H, 2H, and 3H attack, and his new 2H is this driving move similar to Arikune's 2C in BlazBlue. Moving normals are pretty strong, and if you ever fought a Jacko in Strive, you probably know how annoying her 2D can be. Bedman's 2H seems like a decent callout move in neutral and an important combo filler. Now, losing his ground tunnel attacks kind of hurt a bit, but to be fair, these moves were pretty weak in Rev 2. They had no reward, and if Bedman whiffed him, he's pretty much dead. The replacement for this kind of full screen check is his new projectile, which I'll cover later. And that's mostly what I saw for his normals. 2S looks rock solid, JP looks strong, I'm happy with what I saw. Bedman's specials were heavily revamped along with his famous deja vu mechanic. Before, Bedman's specials would leave a mark on the screen where he could replay them over and over for a set period. This essentially allowed Bedman to set up an initial mix-up off of his knockdowns and loop his pressure over and over if his opponent either gets hit or does not properly escape. The minigame to beat Bedman's knockdown pressure was to IB the normal prior to him cancelling the deja vu and use that reduced block stun to escape. It's safe to say that none of that will work in Strive if they copy-pasted Bedman as it is from Exert to Strive. He'd likely be too strong due to IB not reducing block stun. The rework to Bedman's kit revolves around this mechanic called errors. When Bedman performs a special, the mechanical bed frame seems to be attempting to replay the special, but instead errors out and a different follow-up comes out. The important thing to understand is that Bedman's errors automatically come out. Like, imagine if Exert Bedman did a special and the deja vu automatically replays while I'm doing something. Now that's kind of nuts. Strive Bedman cannot queue up errors back to back, but he instead can queue up new errors by following up with the special attacks when the prior error activates. The first special I'll talk about is this pin one. It seems like a standard projectile. It's fast and can be done in the air. This is the spiritual successor to Bedman's Task A, 2H, and 3H. It's this new way to check the opponent full screen. Now, Bedman's Task A in Exert was a boomerang projectile. The boomerang part is very important because even if they block, the retreating part of the ball was important to allow Bedman to follow up. The spirit of that is retained with the pin's error follow-up where it automatically fires a homing projectile afterwards. You can check the opponent from full screen using the initial special and then use the error follow-up to cover your more aggressive approach afterwards. Bedman's second special in Strive is the spin. This is the famous combo ender and it works exactly how it does in Exert pretty much. After a bit, the error follow-up is an explosion that looks similar to Potemkin's flick. One thing to consider is that Bedman in Exert likes to reposition after the spin because the deja vu comes out from where Bedman originally ended the spin. He can do some cheeky things with it, and that may not be the case in Strive where he will have to position in front of his opponent to ensure that the error follow-up becomes useful, given that the error follow-up comes from Bedman. The last special that Bedman has is his punch move. It seems to be used as a combo component and can also work as a frame trap within his block strings. The button can also be held to enhance his launch. This move also guard breaks the opponent, but I'm unsure if he has frame advantage afterwards. I also don't know if the held version changes any of that. The error follow-up to this is that Bedman drops his head downwards. This type of trajectory is really interesting. If Bedman is airborne, I'd imagine he can just drop the bomb on his opponent to not only protect him from anti-airs, but to also set up some ambiguous left-right mix-ups. At the very least, when the opponent blocks this ball, it may allow Bedman to go for a high-low afterwards. Now, those who are astute may have noticed I implied that Bedman only has 3 special, and in my opinion, he kind of only does. Bedman's other 2 specials manipulates his error follow-ups. He has one where he immediately cash out on the error follow-up at the cost of just doing an animation, and one where he can reset the timer before the follow-up comes out, effectively delaying it. Overall, Bedman's specials actually are a lot more simpler in this game. He seems to contain the core components that he needs. He has a fantastic projectile for a full screen check, he has a combo ender special, and he has this other utility special that can be used for combos and for block strings. Bedman and Exert had pretty much one super. Yeah, don't bring up Heavy Jack. That is not a super, that is a waste of meter. Bedman's actual super sucks to say the least. It was slow, it was throwable after the animation frames. Bedman didn't really use supers much outside of combo extensions and finishers. He didn't have a reliable means to combo into supers usually. In Strive, they normalized the supers quite a bit. The new Strike super looks pretty standard, invul non-startup, and can break walls while doing good damage. The other super is hard to comment on because it's one that requires considerable lap time and playtime to truly break down. This is an install super that increases attack, defense, and enhances his error follow-ups. The error follow-ups become unburstable and can wall break with hard knockdown, which is pretty crazy. The enhanced pin error follow-up legit feels like a Happy Chaos charge shot now by speed and by launch. The enhanced spin error follow-up looks like a really crazy version of Pod's flick. and the enhanced error follow-up of the punch special is an even larger explosion. Overall, pretty good, and far better than what he'll ever have in Exert. There were two factors why I didn't make this video initially, and they both hinged on the unknowns. Well, before they were known, and its damage and defense. Bedman's damage in Exert is pathetic, to say the least. I often say that Bedman wins by death of 1,000 cuts, and that's primarily the reason why Bedman in Rev 2 was not a very good character. The character just could not win the damage exchanges. His neutral was okay, and he had the means to play a pretty interesting one, but his damage and confirms being abysmal meant that your decision making as a Bedman player required you to consider to always take the lowest risk option. This was further pushed by the fact that there was a life nerf going from Rev 1 to Rev 2, and Bedman went effectively from the top 5 tankiest characters to average life, which is pretty bad for a character of this size. Strive seems to mostly resolve the damage issue, and I'm not sure if it's because Bedman's damage is high or it's because the game is just Guilty Gear Strive, but either way, it works for me. As for life, it seems to be that Bedman's defense modifier may be similar to Soul's given how much damage that he takes. His guts still may be at 0 though, so Bedman's life could be nearing on the middling end or slightly below average. Given the design of his pressure and neutral in Strive though, lower life may be a good balancing point. Bedman is a very special character to me, and as said earlier, when they announced him, I felt something special. But then there popped the angel and devil on my shoulders. The devil on my shoulder said, this character is going to be ruined, just like how they butchered so-and-so other character. Now the angel on my shoulder said, yo, we gotta stop playing the funny fan man. I'm glad to learn that my fears were unwarranted, and Bedman looks really good. This whole entire video is speculative, but that's all I have. If he's good, then he's good. And if he's not, well, I'll still play him. He seems faithful to what he was, and what he originally was is still a blast to play. Thanks for watching my video. Until next time, take care.